Hello, everyone. It's March 19th and time again for another edition of Wednesday with Walton and Reis. I'm Brian Walton and this is Kyle Reis. Welcome, Kyle.
Hello, Brian. How are you, sir?
Good. And as folks know, our podcast is available each week in video form here at thecardinalnation.com and in audio form at the Scoops Sports Network and all your favorite podcast apps. So, with that housekeeping out of the way, we'll get to work. And that is, we're going to talk about the spring breakout game that was held last Friday. And I had the opportunity to sit in the front row, and there weren't as many people there as I thought there might be, but had a good perspective of the game. And Kyle was among the many who watched it on television. So, we have a lot of things to share there. And of course, because the St. Louis Cardinals are, about 5 days away from leaving Jupiter for the spring, the roster is coming into form, but there are still some decisions to be made. And we'll talk a little bit about the decisions that have already been made, as well as some of them that have not yet been made, but will be very soon. And I suspect that'll take our half an hour-ish time. But if not, I've got some other things up my sleeve, and probably so does Kyle.
Let's get ranting, Brian. Let's get to it.
All right, all right. So on Friday was the spring breakout game. This is a new feature that Major League Baseball developed. I guess this is the second year. And the idea is for each organization to create a roster of 27 players, 27 prospects, minor leaguers, and they can be on the 40 man or not on the 40 man. They can have made their major league debut or not made their major league debut. And they face off against another team in their area. In this case, of course, nobody can be any closer than the Miami Marlins. So that was the game that was played midday on Friday. Um, the only change, the rosters were announced several weeks ahead. The only change they made, a very minor tweak. Outfielder Jonathan Baez got put on the roster, and Rainiel Rodriguez, the fourth catcher, was taken off. But let's face it, in a 9-inning game, the odds of needing four catchers was fairly minimum. On the other hand, the Cardinals used two catchers out of the gate in the lineup because they chose a designated hitter as their, a catcher as their designated hitter, which was Leonardo Bernal, and starting the game as you would expect is Jimmy Crooks. So the game was more like a minor league game than a major league game, even though it was in the major league stadium. The field, I stayed on the field, kind of down the baseline because I expected the national anthem to come and all the players to come out and stand on the baseline, and I wanted to get a shot down the line. Well, they didn't. The players just ran out of the field and took their positions, and now I'm in no man's land, and the security guards yelling at me, "Get off the field, get off the field."
Oh, no.
They also didn't have a seventh inning stretch. So, in a way, it felt a little more like a backfields game, and I was kind of surprised about that.
Yeah, I didn't even think about either of those things. I'm surprised to hear that, Brian.
Yeah, but I mean, hey, on the positive side, the players hung around after the game. They didn't head straight to the clubhouse like they do in all of them, but maybe one or two in a major league game. A large group of players stood around on both baselines, both teams, to sign autographs for fans. And I think that was a great touch because even on the backfields, the guys are working. They usually have, even after they throw bullpens, they have more conditioning work to do. So the players aren't ever really standing around where they can be approached by fans with any regularity. So this gave fans a great opportunity, whether they're, a Cooper Jerpy fan or a Jonathan Baez fan or whoever fan, to maybe get their autographs. So that was a nice feature in the spring breakout game. It ended in 9 innings. And that was, based on the amount of pitching they had, the fact that the game was tied, they decided to stop the game right there. It was a 3-3 tie. Cardinals pitchers walked 10 Marlins, but they struck out 12. On the other hand, they only gave up 5 hits and then the 3 runs. It was kind of an interesting game for the pitchers. Quinn Matthews was a starter, and he struck out 3 in 3 scoreless innings. But it took him 50 pitches to do that. He wasn't particularly efficient. He walked a couple of guys and got bailed out of a couple of jams by some good defensive play. One was a throw by Nathan Church home, and another, I think, Crooks threw out a runner at second base. I think you, Kyle, we were getting into your hot takes early. I don't know how hot take this really is because I tend to agree with you, but you said that as good as Matthews was, he might have only been the third best pitcher that day, or third most effective, or third
Yeah,
best stuff.
yeah. The third, like most exciting, maybe the most, effective. I think effective was the word that I used. I just thought, and I think this is a good sign for the Cardinals, right? Because Quinn Matthews, in some ways, because of how good he is so ho hum. Like his 3 innings, 3 Ks, 3 walks with a little bit of defensive help. That's the most Quinn Matthews thing out there. It's just who he is. It's kind of ho hum, and but then like you go down and even though he walked a couple batters, Luis Gastelum's inning was so impressive, and it just showed that like that changeup almost on its own can play by itself. So I'm anxious to see where they assign him to pitch out of the bullpen. And then I thought Cooper Jerpy, I thought his 2 innings were dominant. Again, he walked 2 batters, but I thought those 2 innings were dominant. And we saw all of the reasons why you would draft him in the first round. And then I thought even Zach Showalter, I thought, it goes to show you how immensely gifted that arm is and the angle for which he releases the ball from and his arm angle.
Low.
Because he can throw 90 miles an hour and no one can touch his stuff. And they don't even get good swings on it. They don't see it. It is a beautiful thing. So again, I view this more as a compliment to the Cardinals pitchers that pitched in that game. Again, Cade Winquist struggled, but the pitchers who pitched in that game, because in a lot of ways, 2-3 of them outperformed the most sure thing the organization has.
And that's not to talk down Matthews. Matthews peaked 95, which is, that's upper edge for him. But his strikeouts, I record the velocities on his 3 strikeouts, 79, 81, 83. So he's using that fastball to set up his off speeds.
He's the most traditional pitcher that the Cardinals have. It's so fascinating. In some ways, granted, the arsenal's different, but he's kind of like the modern Michael Wacha. They draft him, he makes a quick ascent through the minors, and then he's pitching at the major leagues as if he's a veteran. That's not to say he's going to flirt with no hitters and be a lockdown innings eater who takes the ball in a playoff game. I'm not saying that, but he's just so ho hum and so talented, and again, such a sure thing to be a rotation option for the St. Louis Cardinals in 2025.
And you mentioned Winquist struggled. He's a guy you like. I know he's like your 32 ranked prospect, but he came out throwing almost completely fastballs, and every pitch was 96, 96, 96, 96. Well, if hitters know a 96-mile-an-hour fastball is coming, they're going to get on it. And he got in a little trouble there. But interestingly enough, Cooper Jerpy followed, and he only threw 91, 92. But he mixed his off speed in from the very beginning. He struck out the first batter on 3 pitches, 90, 78, 76. Boom, gone.
Yeah, that 76 backdoor slider that he threw to the righty was perfect. It was a perfectly executed pitch that hit the spot perfectly. And if I remember correctly, he made short work of those first 2 batters, and then that's when he started walking. He walked 2 guys, and he was getting frustrated. But it was. I love the dynamic of the different pitching potential, the different arms that they have in the organization. Saladin and Showalter are all about release point, a vertical approach angle, and then you've got the 2 lefties. Again, Matthews throws 95, but those 2 lefties and Jerpy and Matthews, who just kind of are crafty pitchers and pitchability. And I just thought this was a great exhibition for what the Cardinals have. And even Winquist to throw 96, like you said, but you can see he started dropping some of those breaking pitches. His command was way off.
Later in his inning, he got his second pitch going, and then he was fine. But by then, obviously he was in trouble. But
exactly.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, and he just lost feel for everything, but you could see the arm talent there.
Yeah. And Luis Gastelum start off with a walk, and then the runner immediately stole second. You thought, uh-oh. Well, all he does is strike out the next 3 batters, all swinging. Yeah. All 3 swinging. I mean, that was an impressive bit of pitching, I got to say.
That to me, he was the most impressive. And obviously I have my homer eyes on for Jerpy. That's well established at this point. As a lefty, I have to defend and go to war for all of the lefties. Sorry for interrupting, Kyle. Are you left-handed? I am, yeah. If you can't,
I am too. But
yes.
But I broke my left arm when I was in 2nd grade and was in a cast, so I had to learn to eat and right-handed. So I'm a bat left, throw left, but eat right. Anyway, we're both left-handers. That explains a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, I guess so. I know that most people can assume it by me, especially because of how crazy I am. You all that right-handed work you did after 2nd grade normalized you. I never got a chance to work through my left-handed idiosyncrasies. But
anyway, I interrupted you. You were saying
no. I was gonna say, but Gaston, or he was the most impressive of all of the pitchers. For not only because of the walk, not only because of how but like he has two pitches, and the two pitches are so impressive. And the one pitch, his changeup, I don't think you can make an argument that there is a better pitch in the entire organization than Gaston's changeup.
It's about 10 miles an hour slower than his fastball. So fastball 92, 93, changeup 82, 83. And that's quite a gap for a hitter to try to handle.
Exactly. And he gets swings on it in all quadrants of the strike zone. And the way that it fades, it'll start in the zone and drop before you can hold your swing up. There were poor swings, there were nasty swings, there were half swings, and he just mowed through that lineup once he got through those first jitters. It was almost kind of a relief he got somebody on second base, and it was just so impressive to watch him. He's a relief option. It sounds like he's going to stay in relief, and he's 23 years old. He's never pitched above regular A Palm Beach. I want to talk about him specifically because I would love to see the Cardinals get aggressive with him because of how developed his fastball changeup set is. I mean, maybe AAA is aggressive, and they've got a lot of like backfilling to do at the AAA. They've got older relievers for AAA, but I would love to see him skip Peoria at the very least and be pitching out of the Springfield bullpen.
Well, we're going to learn. And by the way, I have the spring training official roster here, and I can clarify that it is Gastelum.
Gastelum. Awesome.
Gastelum. No accent on any of the syllables. Gastelum.
I like that better than Gastelum. Gastelum sounds cool.
Anyway, now I lost my train on what. Oh, I know. It's going to be a good indication when the rosters are set coming out of camp how aggressive the organization is going to be. Now, the old regime under Gary LaRocque, they would wait till a guy plays up to the level of his league and then allow him to be promoted. The new organization, we don't know. We have no idea yet. And when I asked the questions, in Florida, I didn't get clear answers because they probably don't want to tell. They probably don't want to say yet. But I wanted to know how aggressive are they going to be. Well, their actions will speak louder than words on that.
Yeah, and I know that through your coverage over at the Cardinal Nation, you've been keeping an eye, as you always do, about who's playing where, and of course that comes with in the backfields, what team. That comes with the caveat that you might see, a double A playing for AAA just to go up against the double A arm. But I've really enjoyed your coverage there, specifically about what's going on in the backfields, who's kind of lined up where. So.
And I'm trying to project who I think is going to make the Memphis roster, which of course has. Influenced by St. Louis roster. But before I get into that, I just want to talk a little bit about the hitters that appeared in the game as well. Although not nearly as impressive as the pitchers. It's a little bit unusual to have a first baseman batting ninth, but that was the case with the Cardinals system where R.J. Yeager was that batter. But in terms of results. Probably the most impressive hitter, I guess, in terms of results. Cesar Prieto had the only extra base hit a double. He also singled, but he didn't handle one ball very well at second base. Levinson was good on the bases. Zach Levinson, he scored twice after walking and singling. And Ryan Campos and Jairo Padilla had the RBI. Anybody stand out in that game, spring breakout game with a bat for you, Kyle?
Not particularly. I wanted to see a little bit more of Padilla, of course. I was kind of bummed that he swung at the first pitch, but you could see the athleticism in his swing, and probably part of the reason why the ball did just kind of like jump off of his bat in the one pitch that he got, the one fastball he jumped. I do want to talk about Prieto because I think it's the perfect example of what Cesar Prieto is. He is a hitter. He just hits. And there are some concerns, especially at second base. I think he's a better third baseman than a second baseman. But like I think he's 27 now at this point, Brian. As a 27-year-old or a 26-year-old playing in this type of game, who is more contact first.
He turns 26 in May.
Okay, all right, 26 in May. He's going to have a little bit more success. He's a little bit more polished. He's gone through some pretty intense competition in Cuba before he was brought over to the States, and again, Rob Raines wrote a great article about that. So I just thought, like, other than Prieto, who you kind of expect to do this with his, it's been awesome to watch Zach Levinson have some success not only here but also in Major League camp, or not Major League camp, but getting at bats in major league games.
Yeah, he's been called over more frequently than most guys at his level.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. So I think that's one of the things that I'm taking from this game from the hitters. Other than I want to give you credit because even in his regular at bats, you're right about Chase Davis. He just he can't decide when he wants to be aggressive and when he just kind of wants to hold off. And
And
it's evident.
when he holds off, he always walks, almost
Uh,
always walks, which
uh-huh.
isn't bad. But you want the guy's got great power potential. You want him to drive in runs, and he just seems too passive at times.
I agree. And I thought that was definitely on display in his two at bats. He's going to have to decide what he's looking for in an at bat. And I think once he makes up his mind there, I think that'll hopefully get to some of his power potential. But no, other than that, I thought it was a pretty pedestrian effort. And I still think Leonardo Bernal is taking more impressive at bats in both this game and in his opportunities. Then I think it's going under the radar as well. He and Levinson are kind of going underneath the radar in a lot of ways.
And the other thing, Bernal is probably going to be the starting catcher at Springfield. At least we would think so. Another thing I'm writing about and have written about is there are an awful lot of catchers in camp. I mean, there are way too many catchers in jobs, so I'm not sure how that's going to shake out. But if you're Jimmy Crooks or Leonardo Bernal, I don't think you have to worry. But there are going to be some interesting roster decisions coming up. Um, I think, another guy that you commented on, he wasn't, well, he didn't get a lot of action in the game, but that's Yordeline Pena, who you said in one of your tweets, he is pretty tooled up, if I may quote
Yeah,
you. Tell
yeah.
us a little bit about what excites you about Yordeline Pena.
You never see these guys. So when all of a sudden, he has the big home run. He makes I guess taking a couple steps back about a month ago now at this point in a spring training game, he has a pinch hit. He smokes a ball on the inside quarter for a home run. It's a long home run. And you can see the bat speed. You can see his size. You can see he's got great build. And you could tell by the way he was running around the bases that he's not a handcuffed runner. So then you see him on the outfield and first off, he has a cannon. Like he has a really good arm. I did not know what to expect out of his arm. Granted, he didn't throw the base runner out, but his arm is a tool. It is a weapon, and you can see that even in his big body. And big's not fair. His well built frame. Uh,
6'3", 214 listed. I think he's a little heavier than that, but he's good size. He's not. I mean, he's not Jordan Walker-esque.
and he's handling it like that's an athletic body. That's an athletic frame. It's a build on. So like those are real tools, and I really hope we get to see him at Palm Beach and maybe even Peoria, so that we can put our eyes on him pretty regularly throughout the season. I was just there are tools there that I wish I was more familiar with.
Well, hopefully we're going to get to see him. As folks know who are minor league aficionados, seeing a Palm Beach game is on MILB TV is a rare occasion indeed. But that's not the case with the three higher affiliates. So, hopefully we'll be seeing Pena playing regularly at Peoria this year.
Yeah. Yeah, just gotta hope that there's as many games against St. Lucie and Bradenton and just like the two other teams that have a feed. Fingers crossed.
Right. All right, so let's talk about St. Louis roster and some of the things that have gone on. There was a lot of fan consternation when Matt Koperniak was sent down, a guy who, had a very good spring, does everything well, but is hampered by the fact he's a left-handed bat and a corner outfielder on a team that is pretty well stocked there. Were you disappointed by that? Are you surprised by that?
I wouldn't say I was surprised. I feel like I was not surprised. I expected it, and I was still disappointed, even though I knew my disappointment was misplaced. If that makes sense,
Well,
Brian.
yeah, it's only fair. It's only fair. And I have to be very careful when I talk about this sometimes because people think that I'm favoring the Cardinals when I talk about what I think they will do, not what I would do if I were in charge. Because my opinion isn't any more valuable than yours or anybody else's. So I spend my time trying to understand what are the Cardinals thinking, and it was pretty clear from the start, without an injury, there wasn't going to be a way for Koperniak to make the opening day roster. There just wasn't.
Yeah, and this is kind of what spring's about, right? It put him in a position where if there is an injury, he'll be the guy. He earned that. He fought for that. So, again, yeah, Brian, you've talked about this. I think one of our first podcasts, you mentioned like we all get so upset about who breaks with the major league club when in reality, in 3 weeks, the pitchers are going to be different, the hitters are going to be different, the bench is going to be different. So we'll see Matt Koperniak, and more than likely sooner rather than later.
So in the center field derby, who do you like? Do you like Siani or do you like Scott? And then again, what do you think the Cardinals are going to do? Because I think Scott's had a very impressive spring, no doubt about it. But Siani kind of has this incumbency, and is that going to be enough for him to be able to hold on to the job, or what?
So for me, if I were the one making the decision, Brian, it would be Victor Scott again because I would want to see what that's all about. I would want to start if you're going to start your transition year, whatever you're calling it. Victor Scott is the answer in center, and you run with it. If you were willing to give him the position last year with Michael Ciani, if you were willing to give him that out of the gate, then I would give him it out of the gate this year when he's made so many adjustments and he's gotten so much better in a lot of ways. I'm not worried. Like the way he's hitting, I think is a little illusory because he's sitting on fastballs and really hammering fastballs, so you can't really dive into the stats. But there are two things here that kind of run parallel to me because one of the other position battles is Ivan Herrera and Pedro Pajes, which I'm just going to touch on very briefly there. I don't mean to like get ahead or whatever, but
Yeah, they're both on the roster, you know.
exactly. So it's a whole different topic, but like there's things that are happening with both of them defensively, which are their two question marks. And they're not doing themselves any favors. On Saturday, I believe it was, whatever day it was, there's two balls hit to Victor Scott that he has to come in on. One, he misplays to his left, coming in a little bit to his left. Ball drops in. He's got to have that ball even in those swirling Palm Beach winds. And then later on in the game, there's a ball into the left field gap that he lets kind of eat him. He can't make a play on. He gets a bad jump on, and then he swipes the glove at and knocks the ball into left field. And again, if you're the Cardinals and you have the pitching staff that you have, your defense needs to be as stellar as possible. So for me, again, if I'm making the decision, I don't even care about that. I'm thick-headed. I don't learn from my mistakes, and I would put Victor Scott in center.
But isn't that crazy though, Kyle? Because you got the same issue with those two in a way as you do with the catchers, right? One's more offensive oriented, one's more defensive oriented, and which way are the Cardinals going to go? And unfortunately, this spring we've seen they haven't figured out a way to score runs yet, and so maybe for a while they're going to have to lean toward a more offensive lineup, even if that means sacrificing some on defense.
I can't wait to see. I cannot wait to see, and I wonder if it'll be pitcher selective. Like I've got a pretty good feeling that we're going to see Pedro Pajes catch every time Miles Michaelis throws. The two of them have a kind of a symbiotic relationship now at some point. And I just wonder if it'll be dependent on the pitcher about who goes out in the outfield.
Could be. And with a 6-man rotation, maybe, you could have equal opportunity for the catchers.
Yeah, maybe Matz and Michaelis get Ciani. Somehow Ciani will break with the big league club. I can't put the bench together to save my life. It'll probably be depending on Mason Wynn's wrist now, which is the other story, but which doesn't seem bad precautionary, but it'll be either Fermin or Barrero, and then the backup catcher. We've talked about that, Baker, and then maybe Ciani, and then you do this thing where Michaelis needs defense. Matz isn't a fly ball pitcher to a degree. They get Ciani, and then the other pitchers that put the ball on the ground for the most part, they get Victor Scott in center because you're not as worried about the defensive implications of fly balls. So
yeah, and to be honest with you, I can't see right now how there's room for both Scott and Ciani. I think one of them is going to go down. They're too redundant, even though I said just a minute ago they obviously have different strengths. But let's come around to this pitching thing for a minute. I'm interested in your opinion. I'm going to give you mine up front. I think a 6-man rotation is okay because that gives Michael McGreevy a chance to start. But if Michael McGreevy has to be a swing man, that's not okay. So is McGreevy going to be a starter or is he not going to be a starter? And if he can't start for St. Louis, then he has to start for Memphis. But I have a feeling something will happen in the meantime. And if he gets a chance, maybe he can seize that and hang with it. What's your take?
The swing man's the word, Brian. The minute they said he might, the 6-man, because there's still a chance that 6-man is Matthew Liberatore. I feel like that's kind of one of the things that's been swept under the.
I know they're saying. I'm trying to everything. I know they're saying that, but how many games has he started? I mean, it just feels like they don't want to hurt anybody's feelings by saying the obvious that Liberatore's been a great soldier, but he's the number 7 starter right now. And you can't divide 7 into 5. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. So, but even then, is whoever they commit to as a 6-man, he can't be a swing man. That is too easy of a role to screw up, and we've seen them do it. And part of the reason I bring up Matthew Liberatore, other than that, I think he is also involved in this 6-man rotation thing, is because every time they try to use Matthew Liberatore in the swing role, it has screwed up both his ability to be a reliever and a starter. And he kind of gets put in this limbo that doesn't help the Cardinals because they never know exactly when to use him because they don't want to use him too early in case they need him a couple days later for a long relief role. And it has not worked out when they've done the swingman, because when you put somebody in the swingman spot, it's just too easy to make the wrong decision. You're just setting yourself up for the wrong decision on when to use that person. So I don't like that. But if they commit to the 6-man rotation and he is starting every 6th game, I'm in. I love it. Let's do it. Let's have some fun. Let's see where it goes after 1 month. Brian, if I can double back around, I gave all of my stupid thoughts about the center field spot. What do you think about the center field spot? Where do you stand on that?
Again, it's very simple. If you want defense, you play Siani. I mean, he is a stellar defender. He's the better defender of the two, even before you gave us those two recent examples of Scott. Scott had a great spring. I think there's some smoke and mirrors in that. I've said it over and over. I won't say it long time here, but until he learns how to bunt effectively, he's not going to be a complete offensive player, and I haven't seen it yet. Yeah. So I don't really like either one of the options, but they're the best they have.
Yes, I agree. I agree, and I guess some of the journalists have been on Derek Gould. I've seen him specifically. He's talked about how the Cardinals do seem committed to giving Lars Nootbaar more of a run in center. So we'll see how that goes.
That'll be great until Lars gets hurt, and then everybody's going to say, "Why did you put Lars in center?" And he smashed into the wall again and got hurt, and now he's only going to play 100 games again. And I mean, I wasn't going to get into this comparison that was done, but now since you opened the door, well, let's talk about that briefly. And this is, of course, John Denton of MLB.com had some data that looked at Lars Nootbaar's hard contact number being high and his chase rate being low and his walk rate being high. And then there was a measure that I had never heard of before, to be honest with you, called blasted swing rate. And in that measure, he equates to Ohtani. And I don't know how, I don't even know how Soto got thrown in there. But anyway, I don't think it's fair to Lars Nootbaar to compare him to Ohtani in any way other than they're both outfielders in baseball.
Yeah, I thought it was funny because you could, and again, maybe I'm just projecting, but as you're reading through that, and even the quotes from Lars were like, "Hey man, don't do this to me. Please don't do this to me. Like, why are you doing this to me? Like, can I stay healthy? Can we just see, please?" So yeah, no, I felt so sorry for him, and as I'm reading it, I was just kind of chuckling because I thought, just let the guy go, please. So yeah, that was intense. That was way too much for me.
All right. So last thing, this is where we're going to talk about some of your hot takes. I've already shared some of them. So what I want to do, Kyle, you did a Prospect After Dark feature here the last few days. I didn't get, to be honest with you, I didn't get a chance to see it or to check in on it. What's the general tenor of the group of fans that you've been talking to? Because I can tell you the ones that I'm seeing in spring training, these are the diehard fans. They're the ones that pay the money to come to Florida every year. So there's not a lot of concern or outright frustration over the direction of the team. I have a feeling your people on Prospect After Dark might see things a little differently.
Yeah, my people are crazy, Brian. So you get a different level of unhinged.
Well, that's why they say fanatic fans. That's okay. That's great to be crazy. And sometimes it's not crazy happy though.
I think, well, there we go. I think that most of the people who watch Prospect After Dark are similar to me. They have emotional responses, but for the most part, they are some combination of the diehard will ride or die with the St. Louis Cardinals and the people who will find everything wrong with the St. Louis Cardinals. And a lot of times, some of the other bloggers, it's usually pretty rich with some of the other bloggers who are just trying to make sense of everything. So for me, I think the two things are kind of two things that we touched on. People are worried about Michael Siani taking at bats from Victor Scott. And I think that people are worried about Pedro Pages taking at bats from Ivan Herrera. And you're right. The defense-offense of it thing, that's really all it boils down to. What do the Cardinals want? What are they going to focus on in each individual game? And I get that, and I understand it. But I think that that's it. And I think that that's where a lot of let's give these immensely talented baseball players a chance at a runway, aside from just Walker and aside from just Gorman and aside from Newbar. Like, if you really want to give these guys a runway, these are the two guys, Herrera and VS2. Those are the two guys that you give a real runway. And I feel like that was kind of a recurring theme. And also the McGreevy of it all. I think that people at this point, we didn't know that there was a chance of a 6-man rotation and that Michael McGreevy might be part of it. I think that people want a rotation with Palante, and I think that people want a rotation with McGreevy, and I don't think they care about what happens with Miles Michaelis or Steven Matz.
And of course, emotionally, that makes all kinds of sense. But you got veteran major leaguers, and Matz, earned his way to the pen last year. But right now, that they're going to be starters until they prove they shouldn't be. And the Cardinals have got to give them rope. I mean, to knock those guys out of the rotation at this point wouldn't make a lot of sense.
Exactly. So I think other than like those little key points, I would say that most of the people in pad, there was somebody who was like, tell me that this isn't a 65 win team because it feels like a 65 win team. And if I'm being honest with that person, like I said on Prospects After Dark, I can't tell you that. I think more than likely, the chances of them losing, or the chances of them winning 65 games are as good as them winning 95. Both things probably aren't going to happen.
It could somewhere in that vast gulf in between.
Exactly. I think that if you take 10 off of both and you say 75 to 85, that's probably the delta. Of course, they could go sell-off mode at the deadline, and then anything could happen for the last 2 months of the year. But I think that's the more likely outcome. So I think that that's where most fans are. I think most fans view the Cardinals. Most people who are neither show allegiance to neither being full-blown Cardinals, and the people who don't like subscribe to everything that Mo's done is wrong and the Cardinals are a dying brand. I think most people view this as a 75 to 80 win team, and all of the people in Pat are just hopeful for Jordan Walker. We're all rooting for him. So I've loved that. I've only seen a little consternation with Jordan Walker getting a run. So
okay.
I would say right now everything is about where you would expect before a season that is supposed to be transition for the fan base that participates in Prospects After Dark.
Okay, and just for those of you who don't know about Prospects After Dark, it's a very interactive session with Kyle. So the cool thing is you can enter questions and he'll answer them. His answers may or may not be G-rated, but he will give you answers. And the other interesting thing about it is it's not scheduled. It's when Kyle's schedule works out. So you have to follow him on X. Kyle R416. You have to follow him because he'll blast on and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing it tomorrow night. Or he might say, I'm thinking about doing it in 5 minutes. Come on. So it's very exciting and fun. And it's a way that you can, again, pose your questions directly to Kyle, like I get to do here every week. One last comment for you, Kyle. I understand you're going to be going to opening day. How many people do you think are going to be in the stands with you?
Oh, Brian, what we should do is we should bet right now. Maybe we'll wait.
Yeah, all right, let's do it. But, there's a problem because what gets announced are tickets sold versus how many buns show up in the seats. And, of course, weather could be a factor, blah, blah, blah. But put all that stuff aside. All right, let me come up with a number. I will say 41,000.
That's a great answer. I'll say $1, Brian. I will say.
Is this like The Price is Right, where if you go over by what you're eliminated? I should have asked. Let's go closest to the pin. Let's.
All right, that's fair. You're right. I will say that there will actually be like 39,000 people in there, but they will announce 44,000. That is my guess.
So 44 versus 41. We'll check back after opening day and see how we did.
Yeah, and I will take pictures in the 5th inning. I will. Maybe we'll skip to the 1st or 2nd inning.
Because the concession lines get longer during the game. So
You're right. That's it. So in the 1st inning on first pitch. So not to brag, my brother Scott. This has become a tradition. Every year for opening day, he gets us green seats, tickets. It's a whole thing. So I'll be right behind home plate. I'll take pictures of all the sections. And we'll see what it looks like. I'll be anxious to talk it over.
Yeah, good. Well, we'll have another time to talk again on the 25th. Before that, but at that point in time, we will have had an exhibition between Memphis and St. Louis, and we'll be probably these roster decisions will have been decided. And there'll be plenty new news to talk about, I'm sure. I doubt there'll be any trades, but some folks are even holding out that might happen. Make sure you get over to the Cardinal Nation, buy our prospect guide, available hardcover, spiral bound PDF form, and subscribe to the Cardinal Nation if you can. I think you'll find that our coverage is very good, probably as in depth as anybody on the Cardinals minor league system, and I guarantee it's worth your money. But if you find it's not, I'll give you your money back. So what do you got to lose? Give it a try. And with that, we will close the March 19th edition of Wednesday with Walton and Reis. Kyle, thanks again for your insight.
It's my pleasure. I love it, Brian. Can't wait to talk to you next week.
All right, bye, everybody.